As Russia lowered its guard, Ukraine triggered a coordinated strike that paralyzed the command hub instantly.
At 5:47 a.m., a cold silence hung over central Moscow until it cracked. Without warning, a pack of Ukrainian UJ-22 airborne drones skimmed in from the northeast, weaving through buildings just 50 feet above the streets. Moments later, two Su-25 roared in low and fast, striking radar towers with rocket fire. Then came the hammer blow. A wave of BM-21 Grad rockets slammed into the outer barracks, setting off secondary explosions. Arsenal wasn't just under attack, it was under siege. Before we dive into this battle, let us know where you're watching from in the comments. And don't forget to subscribe so you'll be the first to get the latest war updates. The last echoes of rocket fire from the Su-25 had barely faded when Ukrainian UJ-22 reconnaissance drones swarmed over the rooftops. Flying under 100 feet, they scanned internal courtyards, rooftops, and side alleys of the Kremlin arsenal complex, mapping blind spots and potential firing positions with precision. Moments later, Ukrainian BM-21 Grad launchers unleashed a rolling curtain of 122mm rockets, pinning down Russian movement at the northern gate. At the same time, two S-1 Vozdika self-propelled howitzers opened up on the eastern service roads, blasting two key supply lanes feeding into the arsenal and severing Russian logistics. The back of a tracked carrier, a Ukrainian engineering UGV dropped onto the street and began advancing toward the southern technical compound. Controlled remotely and bristling with cutting tools and ground sensors, its task was clear: carve a path through the rubble and reach the vaults rumored to house advanced targeting systems and encrypted communications archives. Russia fired back. A battery of Jiatsin B guns, positioned just across the Moskva River, opened up with counter-battery fire. But through the dense haze of smoke and airborne dust, the salvos landed wide. Ukrainian forces pressed the breach. What began as a probing strike had now escalated into full urban combat. The last of the Grad rockets were still slamming into the arsenal's outer compound when deep underground hatches cracked open. From beneath the complex, Russia's armored response emerged: two platoons of T-80 main battle tanks, engines roaring, grinding over shattered concrete. Flanking them were Uran-9 unmanned ground combat vehicles, small but bristling with autocannons and anti-tank missiles. This wasn't a retreat, it was a direct counterpunch. The tanks rumbled out onto Lenina Street, sweeping their turrets across fire-scorched intersections as they advanced to re-establish control of the southern corridor. Overhead, S-400 launchers came online, creating a protective dome against additional Ukrainian airstrikes. The message was clear: the Kremlin arsenal would not fall without a fight. But Ukraine had planned for this. From behind evacuated apartment blocks, PT-91 Twardy tanks powered up, their diesel engines muffled by layers of debris. Their gun barrels never moved fast, just deliberate, precise arcs toward pre-marked zones. Moments later, the first Stugna P missiles streaked from upper floors and alleyway ambush sites, striking the lead T-80 at a 40-degree angle and disabling its track. The Russian column pushed forward regardless, but with every 30 feet gained came return fire from three synchronized angles: tank, missile, and rooftop drone feed. What looked like open ground had been mapped, layered, and trapped. One Uran-9 attempted to flank, but was met with a direct 125mm shell through a gap in the wall, fired by a PT-91 holding tight near a burned-out bus stop. Smoke, shrapnel, and engine fire filled the narrow street canyons. The arsenal was no longer under siege. It had become a chessboard of urban mechanized warfare, block by block, turret by turret. Steel clashed not in open fields but in alleyways and broken storefronts. And every inch of ground cost dearly. The armored clash had reached a grinding tempo. Shells echoed off shattered walls, and the streets around the Kremlin arsenal burned in a haze of diesel smoke and pulverized concrete. Then, at 7:15, a new threat arrived, not from the streets, but from the sky. Two Russian Tu-160 Blackjack strategic bombers soared high over southwestern Moscow, flying beyond the range of most tactical air defenses. From over 55 miles out, they released a spread of Kh-101 long-range cruise missiles programmed to strike Ukraine's forward command post near the Yauzа River. Each warhead carried the weight of disruption, not just explosive force, but the potential to decapitate the advancing assault. But Ukraine was listening and jamming. As the missiles closed in, Su-25 seconds returned to the airspace, flying low between rooftops and using cloud cover to evade radar. Their onboard electronic countermeasure pods lit up, pumping interference into the missile guidance channels. At the same time, Ukrainian ground crews activated a Bukovel-AD jamming vehicle parked in a basement garage, pushing a pulse across the attack corridor. The result? Chaos in the air. One missile veered sharply into an abandoned rail station. Another tumbled short and exploded in a parking deck. Only one found its mark, the outer gate of a logistics depot, already evacuated minutes prior. The Russians weren't done. In the arsenal sector, Kub BLA loitering munitions were launched to strike Ukrainian armor from above. Several buzzed over narrow streets, locking onto PT-91 seconds caught between debris, but Ukrainian forces adapted quickly, launching flares, deploying smokescreen drones, and directing a mobile anti-air Igla team to set up atop a ruined office tower. 2 Kub BLAs went down in under 15 seconds. The sky had joined the fight, and just like the streets below, it was unpredictable, fast-changing, and lethal. There were no safe layers now. Every domain, air, ground, and spectrum was contested, and every minute brought a new threat from a new angle. The airstrike had failed to break Ukrainian momentum, but it did set the tempo. As the smoke from the diverted cruise missiles hung in the upper levels of the Skyline, the fight shifted downward into the bones of the Kremlin arsenal itself. Ukrainian combat engineers deployed UGVs outfitted with breaching arms and thermal sensors. These small, tracked machines maneuvered through narrow corridors and collapsed stairwells, carving fresh entry points into sublevels beneath the complex. Once inside, special forces teams followed close behind, slipping through the gaps, clearing rooms one by one in near silence. But Russia had wired the space for defense. From maintenance shafts and service exits, Russian mine layer robots emerged. Moving like slow insects, they crawled toward breach sites and stairwells, dropping shaped charges and motion-triggered payloads designed to stall any advance. In some cases, the entire floor shook under timed detonations that brought down sections of concrete above the Ukrainian path. On the surface, infantry combat intensified. With clear lines of battle now gone, both sides fought from cover. Shattered vehicles, broken kiosks, subway entrances, even stacks of rubble. Ukrainian assault teams moved using 3D renderings collected by drones, detailed maps that helped them navigate the twisted architecture of the arsenal's central block. But every foot gained was a risk. At one junction, a Ukrainian grenadier leaned against a wall for cover only to discover it was rigged with tripwires hidden in a ventilation duct. Elsewhere, a Russian sniper fired from inside a collapsed elevator shaft, catching a scout team between 2 burned-out sedans. Moments later, a rooftop drone feed directed a return missile straight into the sniper's hide. This wasn't a battlefield anymore. It was a labyrinth. Every stairwell could be a trap. Every corner, a kill zone. In this new phase of the fight, terrain itself became the most dangerous weapon, and the only way forward was through it. The arsenal had become a maze of concrete and fire, but above ground, the situation was collapsing just as quickly. Following the brutal subterranean engagements, Ukrainian forces shifted strategy: contain the perimeter, isolate the defenders, and cut off the head. At 8:12 a.m., Russian High Command attempted to push reinforcements in from the direction of Red Square. A column of trucks, 2 Tiger armored vehicles, and a pair of T-72B3 tanks advanced cautiously through Mokovaya Street. But before they reached the outer ring, the entire lead element was bracketed by a long-range artillery barrage from Ukrainian 2S-1 Gvozdika batteries positioned 22 miles to the west. The timing wasn't random. It was fed by low-flying UJ-22 drones that tracked the convoy's movement through alleyways and smokescreens. The first salvo struck the convoy's midpoint, disabling the fuel truck and creating a fireball that halted the entire line. A second wave of shells cratered the intersection behind them, blocking any retreat. Inside the Kremlin arsenal, things were unraveling even faster. Moments earlier, a precision drone strike had destroyed a rooftop comms relay, severing the last high-frequency link to Moscow's eastern battle management grid. A secondary jammer, deployed via quadcopter, descended onto the comms hub's backup antenna, not to destroy, but to blind. The result: complete communications blackout. Without coordination, the Russian units inside the arsenal lost all cohesion. Fire teams began pulling back into tighter interior zones, unable to call for air support or confirm friendly positions. Platoons split apart, some withdrawing into basement workshops, others locking themselves into hardened storage bunkers. Ukrainian drone feeds caught signs of disorder. Russian soldiers signaling each other with flashlights, waving colored cloths to mark safe lanes, others scrawling messages on broken window glass. In one corner of the compound, a soldier propped a white undershirt on the end of a rifle, peeking it out from a bunker slot in a silent plea. But Ukraine didn't exploit the surrender signals with aggression. Instead, special forces teams moved in cautiously, clearing zones and offering medevac to the wounded. The fight was shifting from force on force to control and containment. Russia had lost not just physical ground, but the ability to see, speak, or move freely. The arsenal was now a sealed battle space, and inside it, the defenders were running out of time, options, and bandwidth. With the Kremlin arsenal sealed and communications dead, Ukrainian assault teams moved room by room through the remaining sections of the complex. Combat engineers led the way, not with flashbangs or brute force, but with discipline and restraint. Their objective was no longer to destroy it, was to secure. Any Russian soldier who dropped their weapon was ordered to remain in place, disarmed, and immediately given a medical screening. No threats were issued, no shots fired unless provoked. The tempo had shifted from combat to containment. In the southern wing, a tracked medical robot rolled across rubble and rebar, scanning for biosigns under the collapsed B-sector roof. It stopped, pivoted, then extended its arm toward a half-buried figure, a wounded Russian conscript, barely conscious but still breathing. A Ukrainian medic moved in alongside the robot, pulled the debris free, and hoisted the injured man onto a stretcher. For a full minute, no one fired a shot. On both sides, weapons remained down. Not out of fear, but out of something harder to explain. A shared understanding that the killing, at least here, had reached its limit. Arsenal had been captured, but what remained was a test of humanity, not force. The Kremlin arsenal had fallen, not just as a military installation, but as a symbol. Ukraine didn't merely seize a weapons depot, it cracked the inner shell of Moscow's defense grid, forcing Russian command elements to retreat deeper into the capital's core. The physical toll was immense, but the psychological aftershock hit harder. For the first time in this war, a fortified hub inside the heart of Moscow had been taken not with overwhelming firepower alone, but with coordination, precision, and restraint. A single truth now echoed through both fronts: nowhere is untouchable. And yet, as the dust settled, a larger question hung in the air. Was this the beginning of full-scale urban warfare in the capital, or a narrow window for negotiation before the storm deepens? Amid the debris in the western courtyard, a Ukrainian soldier lowered his helmet and knelt beside a wounded Russian prisoner. With no word spoken, he gently wiped grime from the man's face. Rifles slung behind his back, his gesture said what the battlefield could not. In that silent moment, power shifted. Not just in tactics or terrain, but in what kind of war this might yet become. Our video ends here. Please like it if you enjoy this video. Comment 1 to show support for Ukraine. Comment 2 if you love peace and hate war. And comment 3 if you don't like my video.